AskReddit by V for your attention. What screams I'm a bad parent? Honestly speaking, verbal manipulation and humiliation. I had great parents, but my cousins did not. My aunt has an elder daughter and a son. She used to verbally abuse her elder daughter in front of everyone. She even used to hit her in front of everyone. Mind you, this was when she was 18. 10 years later we were reminiscing our childhood. The daughter is pretty successful with a startup, but she pretty openly said in front of everyone, even the aunt, that the trauma a child faces that young isn't healthy, and that even if she loved her mom, she wishes her mom treated her better. My aunt just shrugged dismissively, remarking this generation is too soft. Ironically, the younger son is spoiled as fuck and hit my aunt back when he was 18 in retaliation of being accused of selling cocaine in his school, which he did. LMAO. Nevertheless, he was sent to Canada to study business and rarely talks with. Using your kid as therapy and then getting upset when they have issues regulating their emotions. My mom, 100%. She told me some really heavy stuff about her childhood when I was 6. So I spent a good deal of my early adulthood figuring out how to process my own problems. Zero interest in the kid. Doesn't care what they do or what happens to them as long as they don't inconvenience them. Only caring for the child when they do what you want them to do. For example, if they play the sport you want them to play. I volunteer at have had student placements at a children's hospital, and we've had patients with serious brain injuries due to abuse, shaking, attempted drowning, etc. So yeah, I'd say those parents are pretty bad. When I was maybe 9, we lived in some apartments. One night I heard a baby crying and crying, but it sounded like it was outside. I looked out my window and saw a man holding a pillow over a baby's face trying to kill it. I freaked out and told my mom, and she called the cops. Years later I met a woman with a child who had very severe delays mentally and physically, and she is telling me the story of how she got away from her abusive ex-husband. In an odd series of coincidence, over 20 years later I reconnected with my neighbor from those apartments. That was the worst thing I have ever seen in my life. Parents who can't apologize to a child. It's okay to have human emotions and moment to be triggered or struggling and lash out or be wrong, but for the love of all things good, apologize and change. My parents are allergic to apologizing when they fuck up. On the rare occasions they acknowledge they fucked up. Pisses me off to high hell. When it's Christmas and you're glad you don't have to see them. When the best gift they can give you is their absence. Yelling at the kid for every trivial thing. My mother used to get up in my face and yell at me for trivial things. She would also spit on me while yelling. Yelling at a kid is traumatic for the kid. Don't do it. There are better ways to communicate than yelling. Your own children being afraid of you. No child should be afraid of the person that looks after them nearly 24/7. I really don't think it clicks till adolescence either, when you look back and realize that you really were terrified of your father 24/7 as a child. When one of your mom's boyfriends touches you when you're a 14-year-old girl and you tell her, and she says don't flirt with my boyfriend. Years later you bring it up and she says I don't remember saying that. Of course they conveniently don't remember the things you point out that they did that have hurt you, and in your case literally hurt you. Punishing adult children when they don't do everything you say by silent treatment or nasty texts. Days later acting like nothing happened. Saying, you never let go of things. My parents did this when I became a teen. No face-to-face converse, just shameful texts. The next day they would act like nothing happened. They've been alcoholics my whole life, and when I hit teenage years I got into alcohol and hard drugs. Me and my mom fought every night, and the next morning she would act like nothing happened. Trying to address it was pointless because she would fly off the handle screaming. And then dad would send me a shitty text about how I should be ashamed of myself and that I'm breaking my mom. There's never been any conflict resolution in this house. Just inebriated fighting followed by denial. I was molested from age 3-6. Told my parents, but they did nothing. In my 20s, my mom had the audacity to tell me that I asked for it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a mother anymore. 6-11 For Me, by my maternal grandfather. When I told my mom about it years later, she said it wasn't that big a deal. Yes it was, Mom. Good old grandpa molested all 4 of his kids, and tried to carry on the family tradition. He finally stopped when I stood up to him. My mom sure didn't. Your kids never visiting once they move out or go to college. Oh it's me. You've caught me. Both of my parents got separated this year and both of them will be enjoying Christmas alone. They have truly reaped what they have sown. Always believing they are right because they are the adult and therefore not letting the child have any say. If I had a dime for every time I heard this as a kid, I'd have had my therapy paid for well into my 40s. Blaming your own mistakes and regrets on your kids. And on the flip side, living vicariously through your children because of your own mistakes and regrets. Demeaning your children as means of punishment. The shame game. Brutal. You're the reason I'm stuck with your father. Sure mom, sure. My favorite response to that is, I didn't pick him, you did. Saying you're too young to be depressed and ignoring red flags from mental illnesses. I felt that personally. Ironically, never thinking you're a bad parent. I was assigned to arrange a free parenting with love and logic course a bit late in the evening for our school. I thought given the time the class was, lots of parents of some of the challenging kids who work, could make it to the class. Within a very short time, the class was full. I attended the class too and noticed the parents I saw were either teachers or parents of well-behaved kids. I felt so naive to think parents of naughty kids would even bother to show up. This still makes me sad to this day. Saying things like you're such a disappointment, I wish I had a daughter instead, you ruined my and your mother's sex life. This is stuff I heard for years. What the actual hell? That's just messed up. Never saying sorry to the kid when the parents make a mistake. My mom has extreme accountability issues. Nothing is ever her fault. I'm 43M. And after therapy this year I finally confronted her about the abuse I suffered as a kid, emotional from her, and physical from my dad. You know what she told me? That my behavior was the reason she and dad had marital problems, and if I had just tried to be a better kid, the whole family could have been happier. I'm very minimal contact with her for so many reasons. Making your child think they aren't good enough. My mom once told me you're a screw up and you'll always be a screw up. I still think about that every time life isn't going my way or I'm feeling bad. Telling your kid that you need them only for their money in the future. One day we will all live on the same plot of land so that you can still take care of me. I've got a life to live. Stop holding me back with your already health issues you cause yourself because you've been deadbeat for the past 20 years, Mom. Triangulation. After divorce, one of our parents immediately weaponized our relationship against the other. I'm 32 and still unweaving all of the details in my brain. My mom did this big time with us. Behave or I'll send you to your father's was a threat as a kid. Never really knew my dad or why they got divorced. He's dead, so I know I'll never get the actual reasons or facts on it. Edit. To clarify, Mom didn't kill him. They divorced then he died years later. IDK if this really screams it, but I absolutely hate when adults tell other adults their children's shameful secrets for no reason, even strangers. It tells me those children probably don't feel like they can trust their parents. Oh my gosh. I hated this. My parents would exaggerate any perceived bad thing I did, which was usually something totally asinine and mundane that they turned into a fictitious horrible thing. they'd pass it around extended family. But my brother, who was quite the troublemaker, rule breaker or breaker, they'd downright lie about the wonderful things he does and achieves. Blatant lies. All the messed up stuff he did never happened. But I was 5 minutes late for curfew. That became I was 3 hours late, pissed drunk, crashed a car, got arrested. Actually what my brother did. That's the shit they'd do. Even in adulthood, this behavior continues. It's infuriating. Not giving the kids rights privacy. My ex's mom read her diary when she was a kid and told the whole neighborhood about it. She doesn't trust her mom with any secrets to this day. Treating your kid as your therapist. My mom found a love note to my dad from his mistress, which included a condom. That day, she picked me up from school, 9th grade, drove a few minutes down the road in an angry silence, then suddenly pulled over and thrust this letter in my face. She then proceeded to come into my room, crying, a number of times over the next couple of years to tell me about their problems and the divorce. Meanwhile, just after the divorce, my dad used me as his relationship therapist with his mistress turned girlfriend. At one point I snapped and yelled, "I've never even been on a date. How would I know about any of this?" Your adult children don't talk to you. Someone tell my dad this. I would, but we haven't spoken in over 5 years. Using them as props game for your YouTube channel. Or social media in general. The infantilization of their children. Wanting them to stay helpless babies forever because they don't want them to grow up. I'm a nanny and it seems like a growing trend. It's one thing to engage in some infantile behavior or spoil your children a little. It's another thing to bend to every whim and not make your kids uncomfortable. Example with some kids I'm currently dealing with, not potty training them. Maybe I'm just jaded, however I think a lot of people place their entire identity and purpose onto their children and need to keep those children helpless and clueless as not to lose that. All subconsciously of course. Using children as pawns in divorces or separations. My niece's father just called his 7-year-old daughter to tell her to make her mother apologize for blocking his number last night. He is upset she won't listen to him scream at her. Kids are opening presents and he's screaming vulgarities at his daughter. Dad of the year right there. So yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.